June 28, 1914, Sarajevo, Bosnia. A 19-year-old Serbian nationalist named Gavrilo Princip fired 2 shots. Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary died. His wife Sophie died beside him. 5 weeks later, Europe was at war. 4 years later, 4 empires lay in ruins. The Russian Empire collapsed. Tsar Nicholas II executed. Communist revolution. The Austro-Hungarian Empire shattered, dissolved into 7 separate nations. The Ottoman Empire destroyed. 6 centuries of rule ended. The German Empire defeated. Kaiser Wilhelm II abdicated, forced into exile. 4 empires, all gone in 4 years. The War to End All Wars says this was a tragic accident. A random assassination triggered alliances, mobilizations spiraled out of control, and European powers stumbled into catastrophic war nobody wanted. The War to End All Wars, the Great War, an unintended disaster. But what if that's not true? What if World War I wasn't an accident, but a designed mechanism to destroy Europe's empires? What if certain powers understood that the old imperial order was unsustainable, and war was the only way to break it? Think about what happened after World War I. The Russian Empire became the Soviet Union. The Austro-Hungarian Empire fragmented into independent nation-states. The Ottoman Empire was partitioned. The German Empire was stripped of territory and colonies. And one power emerged strengthened: the United States of America. Before 1914, America was a regional power. After 1918, America was the world's largest creditor, industrial leader, and emerging superpower. Coincidence? Consider the timing. By 1914, Europe's empires were already cracking. Nationalist movements in the Balkans, independence demands across colonial holdings, ethnic tensions within multinational empires. The old order was unsustainable. But empires don't voluntarily dissolve. They fight to survive. Unless war destroys them so completely, they can't fight anymore. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is structural analysis. Sometimes systems become so rigid, so contradictory, so unstable, that only catastrophic shock can break them. World War I was that shock. Whether intentionally designed or historically inevitable, it accomplished something reformers and revolutionaries had failed to achieve. It destroyed the European imperial system. Was World War I designed to destroy Europe's empires, or did it just happen to destroy them, and certain powers benefited from the ruins? The answer is more complex than you think. To understand whether World War I was designed to destroy empires, we first need to understand why those empires needed to fall. By 1914, Europe's imperial system was fundamentally unsustainable. The Russian Empire, 130 million people, one autocrat. The Russian Empire stretched from Poland to the Pacific. 130 million subjects, speaking hundreds of languages, dozens of ethnic groups, multiple religions, all ruled by one man, Tsar Nicholas II, an absolute monarch. No parliament, no constitution, no democracy. By 1900, this system was failing. The 1905 revolution nearly toppled the Tsar. Worker strikes, peasant uprisings, mutinies in the military. Bloody Sunday, peaceful protesters massacred outside the Winter Palace. Nicholas survived by promising reforms: a parliament, the Duma, constitutional limitations on autocracy. But he never truly shared power. The Duma was weak. Real authority remained with the Tsar. Industrial workers lived in poverty. Peasants wanted land reform. Ethnic minorities demanded autonomy. Revolutionary movements grew stronger. The Russian Empire was a powder keg, waiting to explode. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, 11 nationalities under one crown. The Austro-Hungarian Empire was even more unstable. 11 major nationalities: Germans, Hungarians, Czechs, Slovaks, Poles, Ukrainians, Romanians, Croats, Serbs, Slovenes, Italians. Each wanted autonomy or independence. Each resented rule by Vienna and Budapest. The empire held together through complex constitutional arrangements. Austria and Hungary were dual monarchies under one emperor. Other nationalities had limited representation. But it wasn't enough. Czechs demanded self-governance. South Slavs wanted independence or unification with Serbia. Italians looked to Italy for liberation. Emperor Franz Joseph, aging and exhausted, knew the empire was dying. He reportedly said, "After me, the deluge." Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the throne, planned federal reforms, give nationalities more autonomy, create a United States of Austria. That's why Serbian nationalists assassinated him. They feared reform would make the empire sustainable, preventing Serbian expansion. The Ottoman Empire, the sick man of Europe. For centuries, the Ottoman Empire ruled from Vienna to Yemen. Muslim, Christian, and Jewish subjects. Arabs, Turks, Greeks, Armenians, Kurds. By 1900, it was collapsing. Greece, independent since 1821. Serbia, Romania, Bulgaria, independent after 1878. Egypt, effectively controlled by Britain. North Africa, lost to European colonialism. The empire was bankrupt, debt to European banks, infrastructure crumbling, military outdated. Young Turk revolutionaries seized power in 1908, promising reform and modernization. But they couldn't stop the bleeding. Italy took Libya in 1911. Balkan nations seized most remaining European territory in 1912-1913. By 1914, the Ottoman Empire controlled Anatolia, Syria, Palestine, Mesopotamia, Arabia. Barely. European powers were already planning how to partition Ottoman territories after the inevitable collapse. The German Empire, new, aggressive, unsustainable. Germany was different, unified only in 1871. Young, powerful, rapidly industrializing. But the German Empire had its own contradictions. Kaiser Wilhelm II wanted global power, a colonial empire rivaling Britain's, a navy challenging British supremacy, economic dominance in Europe. But Germany lacked resources, surrounded by potential enemies, dependent on imports, strategically vulnerable. German military planners believed war with France and Russia was inevitable. Better to fight sooner while Germany was stronger. This aggressive mindset created a self-fulfilling prophecy. The British Empire, overextended and declining. Even Britain, the largest empire, faced growing problems. Industrial competitors, Germany and the United States surpassing British production. Colonial resistance, growing nationalism in India, Egypt, Ireland. Military overstretch. Britain couldn't defend all territories simultaneously. Financial strain. Empire maintenance costs exceeded benefits. Britain's empire wasn't collapsing like Russia or Austria-Hungary, but it was weakening. British leaders knew the old balance of power in Europe was ending. Germany's rise threatened Britain's position. Something had to change. The imperial system's fundamental problem. By 1914, Europe's empires faced a common structural problem. They were multinational empires in an age of rising nationalism. The French Revolution and Napoleon had spread ideas of national self-determination. People wanted to be ruled by their own nation, not foreign empires. Poles wanted Poland. Czechs wanted Bohemia. Serbs wanted Yugoslavia. Arabs wanted independence from Turks. Empires tried to suppress nationalism through force, but force alone can't sustain empires long term. Eventually, nationalism wins. The question was, how? The reformers' dilemma. Some leaders understood the empires needed reform. Franz Ferdinand's federal plan for Austria-Hungary, constitutional reforms in Russia, Young Turk modernization in the Ottoman Empire. But reform is dangerous for empires. If you grant autonomy to one nationality, others demand it too. If you allow democracy, people vote against empire. If you permit free speech, nationalist movements organize. Reform either succeeds, transforming empire into something else, or fails, accelerating collapse. Most reform attempts failed. War as inevitable. By 1914, Europe's empires were trapped, too weak to maintain the old order, too rigid to reform successfully, too proud to voluntarily dissolve. Nationalist pressures building, economic competition intensifying, alliance systems hardening. War wasn't just possible, it was increasingly likely. The question wasn't if war would come, the question was when, and whether it would be managed or catastrophic. June 28, 1914. Archduke Franz Ferdinand assassinated in Sarajevo. July 28, 1914. Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. August 4, 1914. All major European powers at war. 5 weeks from assassination to continental war. How did it happen so fast? The official story. The alliance system. The standard explanation. Alliance obligations created automatic escalation. Austria-Hungary allied with Germany. Russia allied with France. Britain allied with France and Russia. When Austria attacked Serbia, Russia mobilized to defend its Slavic ally. Germany honored its alliance with Austria. France honored its alliance with Russia. Britain honored its alliance with France. Nobody wanted general war, but alliance commitments dragged everyone in. This explanation makes World War I seem like a tragic accident, automatic processes beyond human control. But is that true? The Austrian decision, deliberately escalating. After Franz Ferdinand's assassination, Austria-Hungary faced a choice. Option A, diplomatic pressure on Serbia. Punish conspirators, accept apology, move on. Option B, use the assassination as pretext to destroy Serbia, eliminating the South Slav threat permanently. Austria chose option B. Austrian leaders knew attacking Serbia would trigger Russian intervention. They knew German support was essential. They knew this risked general war. But they decided the risk was worth it. Better to fight now than watch the empire dissolve slowly. This wasn't accident. This was calculated gamble. The German blank check, enabling war. July 5, 1914. Kaiser Wilhelm II gave Austria-Hungary a blank check. Germany would support Austria regardless of consequences, even if Russia intervened, even if it meant general war. Why? German military leaders believed war with France and Russia was inevitable. The Schlieffen Plan assumed this. Military mobilization schedules were designed for it. Better to fight in 1914 while Germany was relatively stronger, rather than wait for Russia to complete military modernization. German Chancellor Theobald von Bethmann-Hollweg later admitted, Germany accepted the risk of world war to maintain Austria as an ally and eliminate threats. This wasn't stumbling into war. This was choosing war as strategic option. The Russian mobilization, point of no return. July 30th, 1914. Tsar Nicholas II ordered full mobilization of Russian forces. This was the decision that made general war inevitable. Once Russia mobilized, Germany had to mobilize. The Schlieffen Plan required attacking France immediately, before Russia could fully deploy. But why did Nicholas order mobilization? Partly to defend Serbia, partly because his military advisors insisted delay would be disastrous, partly because he feared looking weak after backing down in previous Balkan crises. But also, Russian leaders saw war as opportunity. Victory over Austria and Germany would strengthen the Tsar's position, distract from internal problems, unite the nation behind patriotic cause. They chose war, knowing the risks. The French position, welcoming war. France had been preparing for war with Germany since 1871, when Germany seized Alsace-Lorraine. French military planning assumed war with Germany. French nationalism demanded revenge. French alliances were designed to encircle Germany. When war came, French leaders welcomed it. President Raymond Poincaré encouraged Russian firmness during the July crisis. French military mobilized eagerly. French public opinion was enthusiastic. France didn't start the war, but France didn't prevent it either. Because French leaders believed war was coming anyway, and 1914 was as good a time as any. The British decision, choosing sides. Britain had no alliance obligation to enter the war. The alliance with France was informal, the Entente Cordiale. No treaty required British intervention. Britain could have stayed neutral. But British leaders, especially Foreign Secretary Edward Grey, believed German victory would threaten British security. A German-dominated Europe would challenge British naval supremacy, colonial empire, and economic interests. So Britain chose war. The Belgian neutrality violation provided justification, but the real reason was strategic: prevent German hegemony in Europe. Accident or calculation? Was World War I an accident? In the sense that no single power planned exactly what happened? Yes. But in a deeper sense, no. Every major power made deliberate choices that risked general war. Austria chose to attack Serbia despite knowing it risked Russian intervention. Germany gave Austria a blank check despite knowing it risked general war. Russia mobilized despite knowing it would trigger German mobilization. France encouraged Russian firmness despite knowing it increased war risk. Britain intervened despite having no formal obligation. These weren't accidents. These were calculated risks taken by leaders who believed war served their interests. The structural pressure. But why did leaders across Europe conclude that war served their interests? Because the imperial system was failing. Austria-Hungary needed war to crush Serbian nationalism before it destroyed the empire. Germany needed war before Russia became too strong to defeat. Russia needed war to distract from internal revolution and assert great power status. France needed war to recover lost territories and maintain security. Britain needed war to prevent German hegemony. Each empire had reasons to fight. Each believed they could win. None understood how catastrophic the war would be. August 1914. Europe went to war expecting quick victory. Germany's Schlieffen Plan? Defeat France in 6 weeks, then turn east against Russia. France's Plan 17? Offensive into Alsace-Lorraine, crushing German forces. Russia? Steamroller mobilization, overwhelming Germany and Austria. Everyone expected to be home by Christmas. They were catastrophically wrong. The Western Front, industrial slaughter. By September 1914, the Western Front had stabilized into trench warfare. From the English Channel to Switzerland, continuous lines of trenches, barbed wire, machine guns, artillery. Neither side could break through. 4 years of horrific battles. The Somme, Verdun, Passchendaele. Millions of casualties for negligible territorial gains. This wasn't the war anyone expected. This was industrial-scale slaughter. And it was destroying Europe's empires from within. The economic catastrophe. Modern war required total economic mobilization. Britain, France, and Germany converted entire economies to war production. Civilians rationed. Industries nationalized. Women entered workforce. Governments borrowed massively. The financial costs were staggering. Britain's national debt exploded. France borrowed from Britain and America. Germany printed money, causing inflation. By 1917, all European powers were financially exhausted. Russia couldn't afford to continue fighting. Austria-Hungary was bankrupting. Germany's economy was collapsing. Only America, lending money to the Allies, was growing richer. The war was transferring economic power from Europe to America. The Eastern Front, empire collapse begins. While the Western Front stagnated, the Eastern Front saw massive movements and catastrophic defeats. August 1914, Russia invaded East Prussia. Germany destroyed 2 Russian armies at Tannenberg and Masurian Lakes. 1915, German-Austrian offensive drove Russia out of Poland and Lithuania. Millions of casualties. Russian Brusilov offensive briefly succeeded, then collapsed. More millions dead. The Eastern Front was bleeding the Russian Empire to death. Soldiers lacked rifles, ammunition, food. Millions died. Morale collapsed. Russian generals knew, we cannot win this war. We can barely keep fighting. The Tsar's government was doomed. March 1917, the Russian Revolution. March 8, 1917, International Women's Day. Protests in Petrograd over bread shortages. Within days, protests became revolution. Soldiers refused to fire on crowds. The Tsar's government collapsed. March 15th, Nicholas II abdicated. 3 centuries of Romanov rule ended. A provisional government took power, promised democracy, continued the war. But the war had destroyed the empire, and the revolution wasn't finished. November 1917, the Bolshevik Revolution. The provisional government tried to continue fighting, launched a final offensive in June 1917. It failed catastrophically. Soldiers deserted en masse. The army disintegrated. November 7, 1917. Vladimir Lenin and the Bolsheviks seized power in Petrograd. Their promise? Peace, land, bread. March 1918. Russia signed the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk with Germany, surrendered massive territories. Poland, Baltic states, Ukraine, all given to Germany. But Russia was out of the war. The Russian Empire was dead. The Soviet Union was born. World War I had accomplished what decades of revolutionaries couldn't: destroy the Tsarist autocracy. Austria-Hungary was dying more slowly, but just as surely. The empire's armies fought on 4 fronts: Serbia, Russia, Italy, Romania. Casualties were enormous, over 1 million dead by 1916. But military losses weren't the only problem. The empire's nationalities were fracturing. Czech regiments deserted to Russia. South Slavs sympathized with Serbia. Food shortages created unrest. Emperor Franz Joseph died in November 1916. His successor, Emperor Karl, tried to negotiate peace, but it was too late. The empire was disintegrating. By October 1918, constituent nationalities were declaring independence: Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, Poland, Hungary. The Austro-Hungarian Empire dissolved, not defeated in battle, but simply ceasing to exist. 600 years of Habsburg rule ended. The Ottoman Empire partitioned while dying. The Ottoman Empire fought on multiple fronts. Gallipoli, defeated Allied invasion in 1915, the empire's one major victory. But everywhere else, defeat. Russia invaded the Caucasus. Britain invaded Mesopotamia and Palestine. Arab revolt undermined Ottoman control. By 1918, The empire had lost Palestine, Mesopotamia, Syria, Arabia. Only Anatolia remained. The Ottoman government signed an armistice in October 1918. Allied forces occupied Constantinople. The empire was finished. European powers began planning partition. 6 centuries of Ottoman rule ended. Germany, defeat and revolution. By autumn 1918, Germany was collapsing. The spring offensive, Germany's final gamble, had failed. Allied counteroffensive was advancing. German allies were surrendering. The Navy mutinied. November 9th, 1918. Revolution in Berlin. Kaiser Wilhelm II abdicated, fled to Netherlands. November 11. Armistice signed. Germany defeated. The German Empire, proclaimed just 47 years earlier, was destroyed. The Butcher's Bill. When the guns finally fell silent, the cost was almost incomprehensible. Military deaths, approximately 9 million. Civilian deaths, approximately 6 million. Total deaths, 15 million or more. Wounded, over 20 million. An entire generation of young European men, dead or maimed. Economies shattered, societies traumatized, political systems overthrown. What had been accomplished? 4 years of industrialized slaughter had destroyed 4 empires. Russian Empire, gone, replaced by Soviet Union. Austro-Hungarian Empire, gone, fragmented into nation-states. Ottoman Empire, gone, partitioned by European powers. German Empire, gone, reduced, humiliated, forced to pay reparations. If the goal was to destroy Europe's empires, the war succeeded, but at a cost so horrific that even the victors were devastated. Britain and France won, but they were exhausted, financially broken, a generation lost. Colonial subjects questioning why they fought for empires that oppressed them. The old European imperial order was dead. But who benefited? Not the European powers that started the war. Someone else. When World War I began in August 1914, the United States was a regional power, economically strong, militarily weak, diplomatically isolationist. When World War I ended in November 1918, America was the world's dominant power, economically supreme, militarily powerful, diplomatically essential. How did this happen? America's neutrality, profitable fence-sitting. August 1914 to April 1917, America remained neutral. President Woodrow Wilson declared, "The United States must be neutral in fact as well as in name." But American neutrality was profitable. American banks lent billions to Britain and France. J.P. Morgan became the Allies' purchasing agent in America. American factories produced weapons, ammunition, food, raw materials, all sold to the Allies at enormous profit. American GDP grew. American industries expanded. American banks became creditor to Europe. Meanwhile, European powers were bleeding themselves to death. The financial transfer. Before 1914, Britain was the world's largest creditor nation. London was the global financial center. By 1918, America was the world's largest creditor. New York was replacing London. Britain owed America billions. France owed billions. Even victorious powers were in debt. The financial center of the world had shifted from London to New York. Not through American military conquest, through war loans while America stayed neutral. April 1917. America enters the war. Why did America finally enter the war? The official reasons? Unrestricted submarine warfare, the Zimmermann telegram, defense of democracy. But consider the timing. By early 1917, the Allies were losing. Russia was collapsing.
France was exhausted. Britain was running out of money. If Germany won, American loans to the Allies would never be repaid. America had a financial interest in Allied victory.
Moreover, Wilson and his advisors saw opportunity. A German victory meant German hegemony in Europe, threatening American interests. But American intervention could shape the post-war order. The American Expeditionary Force. America mobilized 4 million men, sent 2 million to France. By summer 1918, American troops were arriving at 10,000 per day. Fresh, well-equipped, enthusiastic. Their presence broke the stalemate. German leaders realized they couldn't win against Allied forces plus unlimited American reinforcements. American intervention didn't just help win the war. It ensured America would shape the peace. Wilson's 14 points, designing the new order. January 1918, Wilson announced his 14 points, principles for post-war peace. Self-determination for nations, freedom of the seas, open diplomacy, League of Nations. These weren't just idealistic principles. They were strategic imperatives designed to reshape the world order. Self-determination meant breaking up empires, especially those of defeated powers. Freedom of the seas meant challenging British naval dominance. Open diplomacy meant ending secret European alliances. League of Nations meant institutionalizing American influence in global affairs. Wilson was designing a post-war order that served American interests. The Paris Peace Conference, America Dictates Terms. January 1919, victorious powers met in Paris to negotiate peace. The Big Four, Wilson, USA, Lloyd George, Britain, Clemenceau, France, Orlando, Italy. But Wilson dominated. America was the only power that emerged from the war stronger. Britain and France were exhausted. They needed American financial support for reconstruction. Wilson had leverage.
The Treaty of Versailles reflected this. German Empire dismantled. Austro-Hungarian Empire partitioned. Ottoman Empire divided. New nations created. Poland, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. Empires destroyed. Nation-states created. American-style democracy promoted. The old European imperial order shattered. The League of Nations, American institution. Wilson's greatest ambition, the League of Nations, an international organization to prevent future wars, based on collective security, international law, and mediation. This was an American vision, American design, American leadership. Ironically, the U.S. Senate refused to ratify the Treaty of Versailles. America never joined the League it created. But the League still represented American ideals shaping global order. The Mandate System, colonialism renamed. The Ottoman Empire's territories were partitioned. France got Syria and Lebanon. Britain got Palestine, Jordan, and Iraq. But these weren't called colonies. They were called mandates, territories held in trust until ready for independence. This was Wilson's compromise, allowing European powers to maintain control while promoting the principle of self-determination. In practice, mandates were colonialism with better public relations. But the principle was established. Empires were illegitimate. National self-determination was the new norm. This undermined European colonialism globally, even in territories not affected by World War I. The economic new order. After World War I, America dominated global finance. The dollar was becoming a reserve currency alongside the pound. Wall Street rivaled the City of London. American corporations expanded globally. European powers, exhausted and indebted, couldn't compete economically. The war had transferred economic hegemony from Europe to America.
What America gained. Let's summarize what America gained from World War I. Economic dominance, creditor to the world, industrial leader. Financial power, New York as global financial center. Military strength, proven modern military force. Diplomatic influence, shaping post-war order, promoting American values. Geopolitical position, European rivals weakened, American power unchallenged in Western Hemisphere. All achieved while suffering relatively light casualties compared to European powers. American combat deaths, approximately 116,000. British deaths, approximately 880,000. French deaths, approximately 1.4 million. German deaths, approximately 2 million. Russian deaths, approximately 1.7 million. America paid a fraction of the blood cost while gaining the most. Was this designed? Did America design World War I to destroy European empires and establish American dominance? No, America didn't start the war. But did American leaders recognize the opportunity the war presented? Did they shape American policy to maximize American advantage? Absolutely. Wilson's policies weren't just idealistic. They were strategically brilliant. Stay neutral and profit. Intervene when necessary to secure victory. Shape the peace to serve American interests. Whether by design or opportunism, America emerged from World War I as the dominant global power, and European empires lay in ruins. The Treaty of Versailles destroyed Europe's empires, but it didn't create stability. It created the conditions for an even worse catastrophe, because destroying empires is easier than building sustainable alternatives. The Weimar Republic. Humiliation breeds extremism. The Treaty of Versailles treated Germany harshly. Territorial losses, Alsace-Lorraine to France, Polish corridor to Poland, colony seized. Military restrictions, army limited to 100,000, no air force, no submarines. War guilt, Germany forced to accept sole responsibility for the war. Reparations, Germany required to pay billions in compensation. This wasn't just peace. This was humiliation. German public opinion was outraged. The stab-in-the-back myth emerged, claiming Germany hadn't lost militarily, but was betrayed by politicians. The Weimar Republic, Germany's new democracy, was forever associated with national humiliation. When economic crisis hit in the 1920s, 1930s, Germans turned to extremists promising to restore German greatness. Adolf Hitler rose on promises to overturn Versailles. World War II was born from World War I's peace settlement. The new nations, unstable from birth. Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, Poland, Finland, the Baltic states. New nations created from empire ruins. But these nations had problems from the beginning. Multi-ethnic populations. Czechoslovakia included Czechs, Slovaks, Germans, Hungarians. Yugoslavia included Serbs, Croats, Slovenes, Bosnians. Disputed borders. Poland's borders with Germany and Russia were contested. Hungarian borders with Romania and Czechoslovakia caused tension. No democratic tradition. Most had been ruled by empires. Democracy was new and fragile. Economic weakness. Industries disrupted by new borders. Trade networks broken. These nations weren't stable democracies. They were artificial creations imposed by victors. Many would collapse into authoritarianism within 20 years. The Soviet Union, from empire to totalitarian state. The Russian Empire was destroyed, but what replaced it? The Soviet Union, a new kind of empire. Lenin and the Bolsheviks reconquered most of the former Russian Empire. Ukraine, Central Asia, the Caucasus, all brought back under Moscow's control. Not as empire, officially, as a union of socialist republics. But in practice, it was empire,
with communist ideology instead of czarist autocracy. And it was even more brutal. Stalin's purges killed millions. Forced collectivization caused famines. The Gulag imprisoned millions more. Destroying one empire created a worse one. The Middle East, Sykes-Picot and endless conflict. The Ottoman Empire was partitioned, but the partition ignored ethnic, religious, and tribal realities. Sykes-Picot Agreement. Britain and France drew straight lines on maps, creating Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Palestine.
These borders made no sense historically. They grouped hostile populations together. They divided coherent regions. Sunni and Shia Muslims forced into one state. Kurds divided among multiple states. Palestinian Arabs suddenly under British control, while Jewish immigration was encouraged. The Middle East conflicts of the next century, Arab-Israeli wars, Iraq-Iran war, Syrian civil war, ISIS, all trace back to how European powers partitioned the Ottoman Empire. Destroying the empire didn't bring peace. It created a century of conflict. Colonial subjects betrayed promises. Millions of colonial subjects fought for European empires in World War I. Indians fought for Britain. Algerians fought for France. Africans fought for both. They were promised greater autonomy, perhaps independence, as reward for loyalty. After the war, they got nothing. Britain and France tightened control over colonies. Self-determination applied only to European nations. This betrayal fueled anti-colonial movements globally. Indian independence movements strengthened. African nationalism emerged. Arab resistance to European mandates intensified. World War I didn't just destroy some empires. It delegitimized all empires, including those of the victors. The seeds of decolonization after World War II were planted by World War I's broken promises. The League of Nations, failure. Wilson's League of Nations was supposed to prevent future wars through collective security and international cooperation. It failed completely. The US never joined. Germany was excluded until 1926. The Soviet Union was excluded until 1934. Major powers acted unilaterally. When Japan invaded Manchuria in 1931, the League did nothing. When Italy invaded Ethiopia in 1935, the League imposed weak sanctions that failed. When Germany rearmed and remilitarized the Rhineland in 1936, the League was powerless. The League couldn't prevent aggression, couldn't enforce international law, couldn't maintain peace. By 1939, it was irrelevant. The economic disaster, Great Depression. The post-World War I economic order was unstable. German reparations created financial strain. War debts distorted international finance. Protectionist policies fragmented trade. When the 1929 stock market crash triggered global depression, the system collapsed. Unemployment soared. Banks failed. International trade collapsed. Economic desperation fed extremism. Fascism in Italy and Germany. Militarism in Japan. Communism's appeal strengthened. The economic order created after World War I contributed to the conditions that caused World War II. 20 years later, World War II. September 1st, 1939. Germany invaded Poland. 20 years and 1 month after the Treaty of Versailles. World War II began as direct consequence of how World War I ended. German resentment of Versailles, failed new nations, Soviet totalitarianism, unresolved Middle East tensions, economic collapse, all traced back to World War I and its aftermath. Destroying empires created chaos. Chaos created conditions for even worse catastrophe. The lesson? Destroying systems is easy. Building stable alternatives is hard. World War I destroyed Europe's empires, but it didn't create a better world. It created 20 years of instability, followed by an even worse war. So, was World War I designed to destroy Europe's empires? The answer is complex. It's not yes or no. It's both and neither. What we know for certain. Fact: 4 empires were destroyed by World War I: Russian, Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, German. Fact: the war wasn't an accident in the sense of random chance. Leaders made deliberate choices to escalate. Fact: the imperial system was unsustainable. Nationalist pressures were building. Reform attempts had failed. Fact: America emerged as the dominant power, benefiting enormously from European empire's destruction. Fact: the post-war order reflected American interests and values more than European imperialism. These facts are indisputable. The design argument. Was there a conspiracy? Secret meetings where powerful men plotted to destroy empires? No credible evidence supports this, but conspiracy isn't necessary for design. Systems can be designed through structural incentives, through rational choices by actors pursuing their interests. Every European power had reasons to risk war. Austria-Hungary, Germany, Russia, France, Britain, each power's rational choice led to war. Was this designed? In the sense that the imperial system created incentives for war? Yes. The real question. Perhaps the question isn't, was World War I designed to destroy empires? But rather, was destroying empires the only way to resolve the contradictions of the imperial system? Could the empires have reformed peacefully? History suggests no. Empires don't voluntarily dissolve. They fight to survive. War, catastrophic, destructive war, was perhaps the only mechanism that could break the imperial system. The lesson for today. This matters because we live in another age of potential systemic transformation. American hegemony challenged, rising powers demanding different orders, nationalist movements resisting globalization. Will the current system transition peacefully, or does it require catastrophic war? The World War I precedent is terrifying, but instructive. Systems don't change easily, but war that destroys empires also plants seeds of future conflicts. Can we do better this time?